The summer of 2025 was defined by a sudden, fierce trade war between the US and Canada. Former President Donald Trump, back in office, slapped a 35% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, an unmistakable act of economic aggression. The move sent shockwaves through both countries, threatening a trade relationship worth billions daily. Prime Minister Mark Carney, known for his calm, now faced a volatile US leader demanding concessions on security and a new Canadian tax on American tech giants. The tariffs weren't just about metal, they were leverage, a warning: give in or suffer. For Canadians, the stakes were enormous. The US is their largest trading partner, and these tariffs threatened jobs, supply chains, and decades of partnership. Trump framed the move as protecting American jobs, accusing Canada of unfair practices, claims that baffled Canadian officials. Carney had to project strength at home while seeking a way out with an unpredictable White House. The world watched as the two leaders danced a tense diplomatic tango, every move scrutinized. The North American trade relationship hung in the balance, with both economies bracing for impact. The tariffs marked a turning point, showing how quickly alliances can be tested by national interests. Political rhetoric soared as economic pain spread and the summer of steel began. The consequences, both economic and political, were just starting to unfold. Even the closest friendships can be tested by the harsh realities of politics and power. What's a tariff? Simply put, it's a tax on imported goods, making them more expensive and encouraging buyers to choose domestic products. The Trump administration's 35% tariff on Canadian steel aimed to protect US industry and jobs, appealing to workers who felt left behind by globalization. But tariffs are a double-edged sword. While they help some industries, they raise costs for others, like car makers and construction firms, who rely on imported materials. These costs trickle down to consumers, raising prices on everything from cars to canned soup. In this case, tariffs were also a negotiation tactic, pressuring Canada to drop its digital services tax on US tech giants. The White House used trade as a weapon, holding a key sector of Canada's economy hostage to force policy changes. This approach turned trade policy into a tool of international diplomacy, fundamentally altering the US-Canada relationship. Tariffs may protect some, but they can destabilize entire economies. Before the steel tariffs, another battle brewed: Canada's digital services tax, aimed at tech giants like Google and Amazon. The tax was meant to ensure these companies paid their fair share, raising billions for Canadian programs. Washington saw it as an attack on US firms and responded with intense pressure, public threats, private warnings, and a halt to trade talks. At the G7, Trump made it clear: drop the tax or face a trade war. Facing an ultimatum, Prime Minister Carney's government scrapped the tax, a major public concession. The White House declared victory. Critics in Canada called it an embarrassing retreat. Some business leaders welcomed the move, arguing the tax would have hurt consumers and risked the vital US trade relationship. The episode revealed the limits of Canada's policy independence when US economic power is brought to bear. In the end, Canada's digital tax became a casualty of high-stakes economic brinkmanship. The lesson was clear: when interests clash, power prevails. The tariffs triggered jubilation in US steel mills and anxiety in Canada. American producers like Cleveland-Cliffs praised Trump's move, raising prices and boosting profits as imports dropped. US steelmakers argued the tariffs were vital for national security and industry survival. Meanwhile, Canadian producers faced an existential threat, heavily reliant on US market access. In response, Canada slashed import quotas and imposed new tariffs to block diverted steel, especially from China. The Canadian Steel Producers Association applauded these defensive moves, but the industry remained on shaky ground. Algoma Steel, a major Canadian producer, sought a $500 million government bailout to survive. The tariffs exposed the vulnerability of Canadian firms built on cross-border trade. For US Steel, it was a long-awaited win. For Canada, a scramble for survival. The foundries echoed with celebration on one side, desperation on the other. The trade war's winners and losers were clear, at least in the short term. The industry's future now depended on political decisions far from the factory floor. The North American steel market would never be the same. The shockwaves were just beginning. The steel tariffs rippled far beyond mills, hitting the entire North American economy. Prices for steel soared, raising costs for manufacturers and builders. Nowhere was the pain sharper than in the auto industry, where cross-border supply chains were thrown into chaos. Automakers faced higher costs and shrinking margins. Daimler Truck North America cut 2,000 jobs, blaming the tariffs. The impact trickled down to consumers. Cars, appliances, even canned goods became more expensive. The cancelled digital tax left a $7 billion hole in Canada's budget, forcing tough choices on public spending. The episode raised doubts about Canada's ability to set its own tech policy. The combined effects of tariffs and tax retreat created a web of economic and political fallout. The costs of the trade war were felt in every corner of daily life. The consequences would linger long after the headlines faded. Economists quickly pointed out that tariffs, while politically popular, often do more harm than good. The benefits to steelmakers were outweighed by higher costs for industries like autos, threatening more jobs than they saved. Canada's digital tax reversal drew sharp criticism. Experts called it a national embarrassment and a sign of poor planning. Business groups, however, argued scrapping the tax was necessary to protect trade with the U.S. U.S. steel leaders criticized Canada's defensive tariffs as too limited, warning that loopholes could let foreign steel flood North America. The trade war exposed the complexity of the integrated continental market and the difficulty of containing economic fallout. Once a trade war begins, its effects are hard to control. The policy lessons were sobering for both countries. The future of North American trade looked more uncertain than ever. The summer of 2025 left a lasting mark on U.S.-Canada relations, exposing the fragility of even the closest alliances. Heavy tariffs and Canada's retreat on tech policy showed that old rules no longer apply. Predictability has given way to economic brinkmanship. Both governments kept talking, but the relationship was fundamentally changed. Companies may now rethink supply chains, seeking to reduce risk but facing higher costs and complexity. The ultimate burden will fall on workers and consumers as uncertainty drives up prices and threatens jobs. The Carney-Trump tariff standoff is a case study in the clash between globalization and national interest. The next steps will depend on political choices in Washington and Ottawa. Will stability return, or is this the new normal of perpetual trade friction? The world is watching, as North America rewrites the rules of economic power.